Hey guys, James Wilson Taylor here for Rock Sound. It's your latest news update. We are chatting with people direct from home. I'm delighted to say on the line right now, we have Ricky himself. How are you, man?
I'm doing good. How are you?
Not too bad, man. Not too bad. Nice to see you. Before we get into anything else, weird time, obviously, but you've been keeping very, very productive. How have you been finding things at home at the minute? And I guess getting back into the way of working, even if it is remotely at the minute.
It's been cool. I work very closely with about mostly one person, honestly. There's a few people on the EP, but I kind of got pretty close with Dylan Bald, who's a producer and in the band Floor. And so it hasn't fully affected any like work process for me too much because it's been so tight knit that it's like, you know, I already do everything pretty remotely in the first place. So it's been like not too much of an adjustment, honestly.
That's good to hear, man. It's good to hear you're able to keep going. And as we can see, by the music you've been churning out, congratulations on these new releases, man. And the obvious one
Oh,
to
thank you.
talk
Oh,
about, we've got Parasocial out there, which I want to get into. Before we get into the big name guest on there, just tell me a little bit about that song in particular and how it kind of developed and started to come together for you.
that one's funny because one, I didn't even know that was a word in the first place,
Okay.
parasocial. I was watching a paranormal documentary or something like that, something about ghosts or something like that. And they said that word, and I was like, that's a cool song title. I just like wrote it in my notes, and I got set up in a session with Dylan, who ended up producing the song, co-writing it. And I just kind of like threw the word out there, and it was like, I think it means like feeling like you know somebody through the internet or through TV. And I was like, it seems kind of timely for what's going on in the world, but like also just in general over the last like 10 years or so. Like it's just a cool, like a little tidbit of a cool song concept. And it kind of just naturally flowed into that. And we just thought it was like a quirky title almost. And yeah, little did I know what would end up happening with the song at the time. But it's funny that it started with me on the couch, like watching a ghost documentary. And just to see what it evolved into was very like, I just couldn't have seen it coming, honestly.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's just like, I love the little stories like that, how like a little, like something anecdotal like that could turn into something so like, just like insane to me. And but yeah, getting the evolution of it, getting like Mark on it and stuff. I don't know if you want to jump into that, but like,
Oh, I mean, before we even get into that, I mean, this is why it's such a nice fit because
yeah,
you can see already in the stuff that's come out from you, and I know it's still early days and everything, but in the few singles that are out there, yeah, I can see the Blink influence straight away. Of course you
yeah.
can. Like they're clearly a band that have meant a lot to you, and clearly a band that you are citing as a major influence on your music. I mean, yeah, talk to me, I guess, a little bit about what Blink mean to you in that way and what Hoppus means to you.
They've meant a lot to me musically, but also just growing up in California, like culturally, socially, like it shaped, like the band is a bit more than a band to me because it shapes so much of like a lot of kids my age group, like their personality, what they thought was funny, what they think is cool, like because at the time, like they were normal dudes in a band, like that looked very similar to everyone in California at the time. And so it starts even before the music for me, where seeing growing up, like obviously being aware of their music, but slightly, I was just a little too young to really be super aware of the cultural impact they had at the time. But I was still able to see their videos, and I have very early, vivid memories of the first few videos, like all the small things, first date, where it was just the sense of humor were like just California, like punk dudes, but in a lot more accessible way to kids and all over the world, honestly. But and then the older I got, the music really resonated with where I was at in life because it was geared towards being in high school or your early adulthood and stuff. And yeah, the biggest influence to me that particularly Mark had, well all three of them, but like Mark's, like in meeting him and talking to him, like I realized how much he shaped my personality, like my sense of humor, and like it flowed very easy to talk to him because I was so like I didn't realize how much they influenced me at the time. And yeah, the older I got, the more the influence musically didn't happen until later because I started in more of like pop and rap and stuff like that as a producer and writer. And it was a real full circle moment to like really, you know, do a session with him and see like the culmination of like years and years of my childhood, musically, socially, and just, you know, it meant more, a lot to me more than just the musical influence is what I'm trying to say, I guess. Like
Yeah. No,
it
I
was a
can
very
totally
full
imagine that.
circle.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
can totally imagine that, and it's something that I've kind of said a lot about Mark, and we can definitely actually put Travis and Tom under this bracket as well. I think
Yeah,
they're
for sure.
aware of that influence, and not only aware of it, but they seem to really enjoy the collaborative process with artists like yourselves, who were obviously at a much earlier point in your career. Almost, almost kind of a mentor type
Yeah.
vibe, I feel. Yeah, tell me a little bit about getting to work directly with Mark and any advice he offered, I suppose, as well. It seems like he's always really up for these collaborations.
Yeah, he's like I was very anxious because I wasn't sure what to expect and how, like it conceptually it's very intimidating. Not that he's an intimidating person, but the concept of like being so early in one like not necessarily my music career because I've been doing a lot of stuff musically for a long time, but like this being my first like few like just like a first batch of songs, and also stumbling across this sound with Dylan was a very new thing at the time. This was the first song we did for the EP. It was intimidating conceptually, but he made it super easy and just normal. Like it wasn't even necessarily like he had advice, but it was like the fact that he didn't that made me feel like validated in being in a session with him because it wasn't like he was like, this is where you should, like sometimes people offer up I wouldn't say advice, but I guess guidance or something in a certain way that feels like a bit of like a I want to use the right word for it, but it could make you feel like maybe you're not supposed to be in the room with that person, or that maybe you're a little above where you should be at the time. And he made me feel like it was just chill. Like it's like I love this song. Like, there's no reason to even there's nothing to feel weird about. There's nothing like so. It was like almost the lack of his approach in being like overly like giving advice or guidance that made me feel like validated in being there in that session with him and him like feeling like, dude, like this is just a great song. Like it made it feel like no pressure at all. It's just like cool. He likes this song. That was like the biggest thing for me to worry about. And we already got past that. And then it was like, it just went super smoothly. And we ended up, rewriting things together and changing parts that just made it like a collaborative in a way. Like we actually like just like mix matched a bunch of our parts on the song and just like threw them all together versus me just coming in and be like, can you put a verse on this? Like, so he gave a lot of like guidance and advice through the writing process and like, like I hear it this way, or, it could be cooler if we did it like this or whatever. And yeah, it was a very validating experience versus like, you know, yeah, I would cap it with that. I think that's
Yeah, no. I mean, it makes perfect sense, man. I'm glad to hear it was such a positive experience. You can certainly hear it on the track. Like I say, it's a really, really great fit for a feature. And I'm glad you mentioned things when we're talking about Blink's influence and stuff. Yes, I can hear it on the sound, but I'm glad you mentioned things like the humor because that's something I wanted to bring up.
yeah,
Like, where I can see that totally through your lips. You look at something like I know you like Black Flag. I mean, there's your tongue's in your cheek, man, and it's really fun and
yeah.
it's playful in that way. Yeah, I just if you could speak a little bit on, I guess, that approach lyrically because yeah, it does feel like humor. You're not overusing it, but you definitely seem to want to inject it into what you do in a big way, right?
I think it's like walking a line between like humor and just self-awareness, like kind of knowing the time of like we're kind of all ripping this band right now. Like it's not even just pop punk as like a whole genre, but like we all know like which band we're all kind of ripping right now, and how would they approach, being in this situation pretty much. And that's how that song pretty much came about, was like, what would their like attitude be on the fact that this many people are so influenced by them at this time, and they'd probably poke fun at it. And so that song, I feel like it comes across, it's funny because it's a song kind of poking fun at like elitist, like punk mentality, but also kind of having it at the same time, because it's like inherently kind of being like putting itself above the shit that's putting like itself above things, if that makes sense. So it's like it definitely was trying to be tongue in cheek, but also just self-aware in a way that's like, making a song that kind of pokes fun at the climate, but also participating in it, if that makes sense. It's like
Yeah.
including myself in the joke. So it's like, it's a bit heady for, I feel like, not heady, but like, you know, like I like to think that like it was just like a funny moment to have in like the climate of like where pop and like rock music is at right now, to kind of just
Yeah.
throw that like cheekiness in there.
Yeah, cheeky is the word. I like that.
Yeah.
It is a little bit of cheekiness about it. That's a very good attitude to throw in there, man.
Yeah.
We should talk about more new music. We know the EP is on the way, which is very exciting. I take it obviously some of these tracks will be kind of involved in there. What can you tell us about what we haven't heard yet? Who you've been working with? What kind of vibes we playing with this time?
I'm really into, like you said, kind of like building on the influence of like the pop punk like attitude, but not diving too heavy into sonically like derivative, I guess. So it's very like of the era, but like trying to find a way to separate it from like I guess the tropes of the genre at the same time. So I like to just say it's pop rock versus pop punk or something. It's like akin more to, I guess, like that 90s radio rock era of things, like, more like catchy hooks that can be thrown into the same world as like I guess some contemporaries that are just in the pop punk lane, without like going too heavy into the roots of pop punk, I guess. So it has roots in there, but it's not uh just having some restraint and like getting too deep into it. But I like to think of it as like, yeah, like pop rock versus pop punk. But I'm aware that like also there's some straight up pop punk on it. But
Nice to have a balance though, man. Nice to have a balance. It's interesting. I mean, citing kind of 90s influences as well, because like
yeah,
that was a time in alt music where it was that, wasn't it? That you had some straight up pop punk, Blink being of course one of them, but then
yeah,
a lot of that sound, whether it's the Offspring or other bands like that, was infecting other kind of rock bands as well in a subtler
yeah.
way. Yeah.
I also like that like at the time, like rock just happened to be pop music at the time, and that was like a specific era where it was like that in that time frame. And I know everyone is very influenced by we're all like super influenced by the 90s right now, but I think for good reason. And it's because uh like bands were just pop music at the time during the tail end of it, or mid to tail end of the 90s. And it wasn't like pop rock, it was just like rock bands writing good pop songs. And I like to think of like my project being in the vein of that, like using the brush of rock and just band music to write great pop songs. Not that I'm writing great pop songs, but that's the goal pretty much. And like yeah, that's kind of the attitude I go into, at least where I'm trying to go towards, and what I feel this EP is encapsulating at the moment.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Good attitude to have, man. Definitely a good attitude to have. Nice to hear a big mix of influences on there. And I guess I'll start to wrap up with this, man, which is what is gonna kind of come for you beyond that. I'm sure you must be thinking about what you want to do next, what those next moves are going to be. Have you started thinking about what a full length might look and sound like after this? Have you started planning out live shows, all that kind of thing too?
I think that the next step would be live shows. Full length wise, like I feel like I have to kind of earn it in a way. Like it's not like I guess like people will tell me when it's time for that, if that makes sense. Like um the next evolution of things for me feels like live would be the next thing, is like if I can land something like that. Like we're still figuring it out because it's like, everything shuts down at the end of the year. But I think the full length thing to me is like in my mind, I'm like trying to prove to myself that I can even earn the right to put something out full length wise. And yeah, seeing like what I can do to like make people want that, I guess, in the moment. At the time, right now, I'm just really focused on like, I guess like realizing and like the thing that I'm telling you I'm trying to do, which is like going deeper into that sound of what I'm verbalizing, because it's not fully in like come to fruition yet. It's more so like this is what I really want to get out, and this is the direction I want to get to, and it go pretty much like EP by EP, song by song, like letting it evolve to what it's gonna be, and not putting too much pressure and not taking it too serious, and just like having fun with it, honestly. And that's like to kind of circle around is the biggest thing I learned from Mark and Blink, and just the era as a whole pretty much is like dude, a lot of people don't get a chance to do this. So like when you do, like just let it turn into what it's going to turn into, and like make fun, cool songs at the end of the day. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So that's where I'm at with it. Is like that's probably a lame answer, but like
No, no, it's all, hey
take
man, that is the staple. You've got to have that if nothing else. Make fun, cool songs and actually enjoy it. Otherwise, what's the point, dude? That's
yeah,
absolutely the right attitude to have, I think.
yeah. It's so easy to lose that part of it, and then it doesn't even become something worth sharing with people because it's like it doesn't feel good to you. It doesn't feel good to. So that, I'm really focusing on keeping that because it's easy for me to lose that in music. So for me, it's like anything I can do to hold on to that is pretty much where my journey goes from here. And whether that's live shows, full length, EP, just whatever it is, like whatever I can do to hold on to that feeling is always going to be the next evolution of what my career is going to be at the time.
Yeah.
So that's how I feel about it.
Hey, exciting times ahead, man. No, it sounds like you're in a good place with that. And like I say, congrats on what we've heard so far, man, particularly Parasocial. I think that fits really, really nicely, dude. Congrats on that track.
Thank you
Congrats on
so
what's
much.
coming next. And yeah, hopefully when these live shows happen, we might see you in the UK at some point, man. But until then, you just take
Definitely.
care of yourself over there, all right?
So much. I appreciate it.
Nice one, buddy. All right. Ricky, everybody.